Pacifica Radio, I'm Christina Onnested. The U.S. Supreme Court is keeping a Trump-era immigration limit called Title 42 in place for now. The nation's high court ruled 5-4 to keep in place the pandemic-era limits that have prevented migrants from seeking asylum. It was scheduled to expire under a judge's order last Wednesday. The ruling will extend the misery on the Mexican side of the U.S. border, where asylum seekers have waited for the chance to make their claims, braving cold winter weather. Melissa Crow is director of litigation at the Center for Gender and Refugee Studies, one of the groups which had challenged the use of Title 42 to keep asylum seekers out of the country.
We are deeply disappointed that Title 42 is going to continue even longer than we had anticipated. The government was prepared to end Title 42 as of last Wednesday.
Under Title 42, officials have expelled asylum seekers inside the U.S. 2.5 million times on grounds of preventing the spread of COVID-19. In the dissent, Justices Neil Gorsuch and Ketanji Brown Jackson said even if the courts were to find Republican-led states challenging Title 42 had the right to intervene, the emergency on which those orders were premised has long since lapsed. Crow said there's irony in Republican governors who opposed COVID restrictions using a COVID restriction to keep migrants out.
The Title 42 policy was purportedly a response to the COVID pandemic, and that has been under control for some time. Ironically, the red states have opposed virtually every other COVID restriction in recent months. And I don't think anyone is under the false illusion that keeping the Title 42 policy in place is going to reduce the transmission of the coronavirus. It is being used, and the red states are seeking to continue its use as a border management tool.
The Supreme Court's decision said the court will review the issue of whether the Republican-led states had the right to intervene in the legal fight over Title 42 in the coming next year. The death toll from a historic winter blizzard has risen to at least 65, more than half in hard-hit western New York, where officials say some 34 people have died. State and military police were sent to keep people off of Buffalo's snow-choked roads as it hampered rescue efforts, even as suburban roads and most major highways in the area reopened. Erie County Executive Mark Polenkars urged drivers to stop flouting the ban.
It is ugly right now on many of the streets, and people are trying to drive on these roads or trying to get into these neighborhoods, and they can't. Please, you heard the mayor beg, I'm begging. Stay home. If it's an emergency situation, call 911.
The storm is likely to be the deadliest in U.S. history. More bodies are expected to be found as the snow is cleared or melts. The rest of the U.S. was also reeling from ferocious winter storms, with at least additional 24 deaths reported in other parts of the country, and power outages in communities from Maine to Washington state, where another storm system hit, and from Canada to the Rio Grande. Deaths were recorded in more than a dozen states, including Colorado, Kansas, Kentucky, Michigan, Missouri, Nebraska, New York, and Wisconsin. Newly released witness transcripts from the January 6th committee include testimony from Cassidy Hutchinson, who says she saw her boss, White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, burn documents in his office fireplace in December of 2020 and January of 2021. Hutchinson told the committee she didn't know what the documents were. Under questioning by Congressmember Liz Cheney, Hutchinson said Meadows may have burned documents a dozen or just over a dozen times from December through mid-January. She says 3 of the 4 times Republican Congressman Scott Perry was in Meadows' office right before he burned the documents. She said the 2 discussed Vice President Mike Pence's role on January 6th when Congress was to meet to count and certify the Electoral College votes. A judge has sentenced the co-leader of a plot to kidnap Michigan Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer to 16 years in prison. Adam Fox was convicted of conspiring to abduct Whitmer and blow up a bridge so plotters could make an easier escape. Fox's sentence is the longest of anyone convicted in the plot so far, though it's much shorter than the life sentence prosecutors sought. A judge has ordered defeated Arizona Republican gubernatorial candidate Kari Lake to pay $33,000 in fees for witnesses who helped defend election officials against Lake's challenge of her defeat to Democrat Katie Hobbs. The judge rejected a request for hundreds of thousands of dollars in fees for the attorneys who defended the officials. In an order, Maricopa County Superior Court Judge Peter Thompson declined to impose sanctions against Lake and her lawyers, saying her failure to prove her case didn't equate to finding her claims were or were not groundless or presented in bad faith. President Joe Biden signed a bill yesterday requiring the Federal Bureau of Prisons to overhaul its outdated security systems and fix broken surveillance cameras in prisons after rampant staff sexual abuse, inmate escapes, and high-profile acts. I'm Christina Onnested reporting for Pacifica Radio.